Hello and welcome to Through Lucy's Lens, weekly videos where I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you'll find them interesting too. My name is Lucy, I'm your guide and a social historian with a lifelong love affair with the history and stories of normal people. This week's video is the story of one house on a remote and beautiful island. It's kept me captivated for months, and I can't wait to share with you the story of Boloquoy. You may have seen a previous video where I shared a tour of this incredible house, now restored to how it would have been in the late 19th century onwards. But today I'm going to tell you the story of the people who lived here. Please enjoy. This whole journey has been a pleasure from start to finish, and I want to extend my thanks again to Jackie, Dave and the team at Boloquoy, who welcomed me with open arms and allowed me to indulge in history, artefacts and be involved in the lifeblood of this extraordinary house. There has been a farmstead here at Boloquoy on the island of Sanday in Orkney since at least the mid-18th century. Archaeological traces found in the surrounding landscape indicate earlier settlement reaching back to the Neolithic period, evidence that this site has supported human activity for thousands of years. Our story today, however, starts in the 18th century. In 1750, shortly before his death, a sea captain, John Fea, Laird of Clestran and Stove, conveyed the lands and houses to another John Fea of Seta. We don't know if John Fea Sr. was a cousin or in fact John Fea Jr.'s father, meaning that John Fea Jr. was actually his illegitimate son. Either way, this land became the blank page for the story of a family through time. At a time when most of Sanday's farms were tenanted estate land, Boloquoy's owner-occupied status was unusual. This independence allowed the farm to remain under continuous family occupation for more than 170 years, shaping both the buildings and their contents through slow organic change rather than wholesale improvement. The current buildings here at Bolcoy were all in place by 1879 according to the Ordnance Survey maps of the period. The name Boloquoy is believed to derive from the Old Norse from "ki", meaning animal enclosure, and "bolo", suggesting bull. Reminders of the island's Norse heritage and agricultural focus. There is the ruin of another farmhouse in a field opposite the current-day Boloquoy house, and this was the original farm from the 1700s. Long before Victorian domesticity arrived at Boloquoy, the Fea family were already intersecting with wider events. A Captain John Fea famously captured the pirate John Gow off the coast of Edinburgh. This was a dramatic episode that ended with Gow's arrest and trial in London and subsequent execution. John Gow was a famous Scottish pirate from Wick who mutineered on a merchant ship in 1724, killing the captain. He led his crew in acts of piracy, including raiding wealthy landowners before heading to Orkney to lie low. Pirate Gow's attempt to raid the Carrick House on Edinburgh, which was also owned by James Fea, ended in his capture when his ship ran aground. Fea, with assistance, was able to trap the pirates through careful negotiations rather than warfare. Gow and his crew were transported to London, tried and hanged at Execution Dock on June 11th, 1725. This story was documented in several contemporary pamphlets and later in books like The Real Captain Cleveland by historian Alan Fea, who was a descendant of James Fea himself. I had the real pleasure of being able to handle and read an original copy of this book during my time in Sanday. Daniel Defoe also wrote a fictional account, The Pirate Gow, and Gow also served as the model for Captain Cleveland in Sir Walter Scott's novel, The Pirate. Who would have thought all this drama was taking place here in this beautiful, peaceful place. As well as capturing pirates, John Fea served as a constable-like figure on Sanday, a real standing person in the community. And I saw a surviving contemporary letter from 1771 that requests that he locates and returns a runaway servant girl, treated legally at the time as property rather than an autonomous person. The document reveals the rigid social control exercised over working women and raises unanswerable questions about the circumstances that drove this young woman to flee in the first place. A really fascinating document. Moving forward from the 1800s, the Fea family continued to farm the land at Boloquoy, but by the 1880s, the last living relative on the island passed away and a new era dawned. In 1886, John Fea and his wife Robina returned to Sanday from Edinburgh. Census records placed the family previously in 1881 at Prince Regent Street, North Leith. And John is stated to be a wine warehouse merchant. North Leith was an urban district characterised by working and lower middle class tenement households. They would have arrived at Bolcoy travel weary, but they bared the hallmarks of Victorian domestic taste from the city. They brought with them decorative wallpapers, furnishings, textiles and personal ornaments that would have been unusual within an island farmhouse. They also arrived with 5 young children: Annie, William, Jane, James and Violet. In the 1891 census, there are also 2 others living at Boloquoy, Jean and Magnus Work. It states on the census that they were cousins, but they were clearly working at the farm as a domestic service and a farmhand. This shows that although life on the farm was hard, it was also comfortable. Life on Sanday would have reshaped their expectations. Limited access to goods meant that maintenance and salvage became necessities rather than virtues. Rudimentary repairs evolved into skilled acts of sewing, weaving, tool making and furniture adaptations, traditions visible throughout the house today. There was a pair of portraits found of John and Robina. These pictures are actually painted over photographs, which was a fashionable trend for the up-and-coming middle classes. They would have cost 33 shillings. On this portrait, they look young and fresh and smart in their Sunday best. But I thought quite the comparison to a photograph of John years later, looking very much the weather-beaten farmer in working attire with rough hands but still the same kind eyes. Their children grew up on the farm into adulthood against the rhythms of the weather, farm life and the seasons. Annie, born in 1876, was their oldest child, but she was also fragile. We know this because a scrapbook was found from her 5th year, and it contains postcards from the local community and her friends wishing her recovery from an illness. Family accounts recall the long-preserved presence of her crutches in the house too, suggesting that Annie was ill for a long time. Despite this, Annie trained as a professional seamstress and even worked for a period in Kirkwall, the capital of Orkney. She never married and she maintained a personal independence that was unusual for women of her background. Annie's health declined and she was admitted to Longmore Hospital in Edinburgh, where she died of tuberculosis on the 11th of February 1905, aged just 29. Her belongings, photographs, pieces of mourning jewellery, including some with human hair, letters and clothing, were kept carefully together at Boloquoy after her death. Her sister Violet preserved these mementos until her own death, more than 60 years later. A bedroom at Boloquoy now bears Annie's name. as the window in the bedroom facing the sea was known as Annie's window, as it's where she liked to sit and look out over the landscape. She's laid to rest at Rosebank Cemetery in Leith. And when researching Annie, I came across a little girl called Barbara. She's laid to rest nearby Annie. And Barbara was 4 when she died of a terrible combination of measles and whooping cough on the 8th of December 1887. Barbara was indeed the sister of Annie, born in 1883, and she died before the Fees made their journey back to live in Sanday. I wonder, did this illness and the dangers for young children living in an industrial area drive their decision to move back to the island with cleaner air? Was Annie already unwell as a young child too before they left? We'll never know, but these stories are what make social history so compelling. Annie, with her calm, kind face, really struck a chord with me during my visit. How I would have loved to have talked with her and heard her stories. The people that look after the house now still say, "Good night, Annie," when they leave this room. Annie's brother James was born in 1882, and he followed the seafaring route taken by many island men. Working first as a merchant seaman, he emigrated to Australia and enlisted in the Australian forces. He served during the First World War as Soldier 188 of the 3rd Australian Pioneer Battalion. James was tragically killed at the Somme on the 23rd of August 1918. He's buried at the Dore Communal Cemetery in France and commemorated on Sanday's War Memorial. Photographic postcards of his grave found carefully preserved in the house indicate how the family maintained his memory from afar. There are several of these postcards sent years apart, showing that the family kept a record of the grave, how it was kept, and that James was kept in their memory. Now the Commonwealth War Graves Commission have placed a lasting memorial on his grave, which can be seen today. William Fea, born in 1878, served 12 years in the Royal Navy as a stoker aboard vessels, including HMS Victory and HMS Hannibal. This was a hard and grinding life on the high seas. After leaving the Navy, he returned to Boloquoy to work at the farm. He never married, and he lived quietly until his death from a sudden heart attack in 1943 at the age of 66. We thank you both boys for your service. John and Robina Fea lived long lives. Robina losing her life in 1916 and John in 1924. In 1938, a cousin, Robina Fea Muir, married James S. Drevers and joined the household at Boloquoy. Violet Fea was still alive and remained living at Bolcoy until her death in 1969. She was the last woman to bear the Fea name. She's remembered as a jovial and kind figure. She also never married, and living relatives remember her sleeping in the box bed, huddled from the cold and reading stories to the children. The Drevers family continued farming at Boloquoy throughout the mid-20th century. In the late 1950s, Oliver and his brother William converted part of the adjoining barn into a new kitchen, anticipating the arrival of mains water. That didn't actually arrive until 1969, followed by electricity in 1974. They never really relied on either of the services, keeping the practices here largely traditional. The 1950s kitchen has been preserved, while the earlier kitchen remains as a sitting room decorated as it would have been during the late Victorian and Edwardian period. Oliver Drever was the final resident of Boloquoy. Upon leaving Sanday for retirement and needing to downsize, he entrusted the house and its contents to Jackie and Malcolm Sinclair. Their stewardship has ensured that the story of Bolcoy, a site shaped by generations of labour, frugality, migration, loss and care, continues to be shared. Rather than a static museum, Bolcoy remains a living archive, a rare domestic record where structure and memory intertwine. It allows the lives of ordinary islanders to remain visible long after their passing. You too can fall in love with Bolcoy. Bookings are being taken from spring 2026 for you to stay right here, surrounded by the memories and wonder of this beautiful home. You can read the books, hold the artefacts and experience the welcome of this house. I've put a link in the description, and if you say in your inquiry that Lucy sent you, they will apply a small discount to your booking. I do hope you enjoyed the story of Bolcoy. I genuinely feel sad coming to the end of this video. Not because my work here is done, as I will certainly return to Sanday, and I'm sure that there's further stories to be uncovered, but the end of this chapter is complete. Please, if you're new here, consider subscribing. And if you know anyone else that might be interested in social history, please tell your friends or share on your social media pages. It really does help me to continue to do what I love. Because my goodness, folks, I love this house and what I do. So thank you for your support. Until the next time, I'll see you here. And of course, until then, goodbye.